Hey adventurers, today is going to be another book tag, and this is the Cosmere Book Tag created by Jessie the Sleepy Koala. This is actually a very new tag. She just created it a couple of weeks ago, and so I'm getting it out as soon as I can. I wasn't actually tagged in this, but I saw the questions and I was like, this is a really cool tag. I like the questions that are posed by it as well as the subject material. So I will say this as well. I could pretty much have used Tolkien for every answer of this tag, and so I refrained myself and limited myself to only using him in one, or his stories in one area, and so yeah, we'll get to that as we go. So this tag, the Cosmere Book Tag, revolves around the various planets. If you want to know more about all this stuff, all the planets and everything, go watch Jessie the Sleepy Koala's original video and she'll explain it all for you. But anyways, so question one is Roshar, which is the story that, or is the planet that the Stormlight Archive is set on. But anyways, so Roshar is name a book with fantastical world building. So there was lots of them that I could have gone with. The one that I ended up going with was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, because it's very much this is magical, this is a fantasy world, but there's also so many elements from mythology taken and implemented in it, as well as Christianity. And just the way that it's all woven together to create this world and this story is so cool to me. It's probably not my favorite world, but again, I can't choose Tolkien for everything. Then question two, Scadrial. Name a book that combines magic with technology. So Scadrial is the planet where the Mistborn series takes place on. For this, I went with actually the entire series, but the Lady Trent memoirs, or the Memoirs of Lady Trent. I don't know exactly what the series is officially titled, but A Natural History of Dragons, or rather book 3, book 2 really, and beyond. You get to experience some of the technology and how it's being affected by, okay, so there's not actually a whole lot of magic in this series, but what there is magical creatures, namely dragons, and so we're seeing how dragons as a species are essentially influencing technology as the series progresses, and I thought that was super cool aspect of this series. Question 3, Nalthis. Name a book with a colorful cover. So Nalthis is the world that Warbreaker takes place on. So the book that I actually went with, you could pretty much choose any book because all the books have colors on the cover, but the one that I went with, and it's just because it was sitting there and I was reading it, is Sitka by Louis L'Amour. So as you can see, this has got a whole bunch of different colors on it, blue and red being the primary ones, with some black and white as well. But it's just a very striking cover and very much matches this prompt of a book with a colorful cover, at least in my opinion. If you don't agree that that's a colorful cover, oh well. Number 4, Sel. Sel is the planet that Elantris takes place on. Name a debut novel. So for prompt 4, I went with Dawn of Wonder by Jonathan Renshaw. This book I have several debut novels on my shelves, or that I've read or that I could have used, but I went with this one because it's one of my favorite books that I've read I think I read this in 2020, so it's been a year and a half now. Yeah, a year and a half now, and I'll be rereading it in June. So starting in just a couple of days. I think this is going up on Thursday, and then a couple days later is the beginning of, I don't know, whenever this comes up, either we'll have started it, or I'll have started my reread of this, or else I will be starting it very soon. And I have a video about my read-along that's going to be going on with this book. I'll link it up in the corner. There's also a giveaway that's going on. Check the description of that other video for how to enter that giveaway. Dawn of Wonder, I should have mentioned this, but this is the debut novel of Jonathan Renshaw. It's book 1 of the Awakening series. It's a high fantasy story, and when I read it, I was mostly blown away with the level of immersion that you get with it. I read this a year and a half ago at this point, and what I remember most about it is how well I can still visualize things that happen. I can see the Misty Vales, I can see Kultum, I can see all these different things that are happening in it, and my mental image of that book is so clear that it's just stuck with me a whole lot, besides the fact that it was a great story, and I'm very excited for book 2 whenever it decides to come out, whenever Jonathan Renshaw can get it out. Book 5, Threnody, name a spooky book. I don't really read a ton of scary or horror or anything, but I did and have read twice, maybe twice I think, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and it's rapidly become one of my favorite, if not my favorite all-time story. And the reason why it fits into the spooky is because it's basically about a magical monster, maybe a ghost, I don't know, his head comes off, they chop the head off and he puts it back on his head and rides away and laughing, and it's the atmosphere of this book very much fits into that spooky. This is the edited and translated by James Winnie edition, and it was good. It is very different feel, I guess. In some ways a much more modern language, a more clear language, but I do prefer the Tolkien translation. It's Tolkien, I can't not prefer it, but also it was just the way Tolkien translates it. He tries to keep some of the alliteration and the meter a little bit closer than Winnie does, and I really appreciate that. Yolen, name a book that shattered you. And I didn't really have a great answer for this. There's very few books that I have come away feeling sad or frustrated, like any very super strong emotion other than that was really good book. The one that I could have gone with was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, but there's one other prompt that I liked better for this, or for Tolkien, so I still didn't use it here. But the one that I ended up going with was Mrs. Mike by Benedict and Nancy Freedman. This book, I went into the book not caring if I read the book, but I read the book and I was surprised that I went through really the entire book not really caring what was happening. But then I got to the end, I was like, man, that was a really, really good book. And it was just kind of the very drastic shift in my opinion and my position on this book, where I didn't care anything about the book, but then I got to the end of the book and I was like, that was one of the best books I've ever read. And so that's kind of why I went with this book. I don't have a great answer for it, I guess. Question 7 is Vaxx, name a book that is not well known. And for this, I went with Recorder by Kathy McCrum. This is a sci-fi novel, and it is written by a Christian author, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. There's a lot of things in it that I really appreciated, and I really am looking forward to the next book in the series, but it's not very well known. It's published by Enclave Publishing, so the people who are in the Christian storytelling community who know about Enclave, they know about this book because it's published by Enclave. But there's a lot of people who don't know about it because Enclave is a fairly small publishing business. Christian fiction is not a very big industry, so it's a fairly little known book, but I really enjoyed it. And then Taldain, name a book with two halves. That can be two POVs, two time periods, two prominent places, etc. And so the book that I went with for that is The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien, really the Lord of the Rings as a whole, but I took specifically The Two Towers because this is the part, and if I can find it, I don't know if it says it in here, but somewhere there's, I wish I would have written it down, but somewhere there's a quote that basically says the reason why this book is, or this part of The Lord of the Rings is titled The Two Towers, is because it has chiefly to do with the Tower of Isengard and the Tower of Minas Morgul, I guess. So it's these two towers, two places, two. That's kind of why I went with this one, and I really like it. Specifically Orthanc, that's the tower in Isengard. My brain was not braining at the moment, and so I couldn't remember it. But question 9, First of the Sun, name a book with animals in it. I come up with Redwall, or the entire Redwall series. I don't own Redwall and I didn't want to run downstairs and grab it, so I just went with Doomwhite by Brian Jakes, any of the books in the Redwall series, but they're about animals. And it's phenomenal. It's such a good series. It's a fantasy series about animals, and it works so well. But as you can see on the cover, I don't know how glary it is, but there's a crow and a snake and a mouse. And there's a ton of other characters, a ton of other animals, but yeah, all the Redwall books are about animals. And then question 10, Braize, name a book about war. So Braize has a very large role in Stormlight Archive. and you don't understand it until like books 3, what that role is, so it's kind of spoilers to talk about what it is, but it has to do with war. And so I went with Lightbringer. I don't own these books, but there's so many books that could fit this prompt that could be about war, but I went with Lightbringer because I really enjoyed Lightbringer when I read it, or the Black Prism was the first book in that series, and it largely has to do with a war between, I can't think of the words at the moment, and I'm not going to look them up, but basically the people who support the Prism and the people who don't support the Prism, and so these two factions are warring against each other. There's way more politicking going on besides just that, but very much it is about war in many ways. And then question 11, Ashyn. Name a book about a broken peoples, in spirit, politically, socially, physically, etc. So I went with Calculated, or specifically book 2 in the series, which is called Simulated. And in this one, the character has lost a piece of herself. She is broken mentally in a way that she is unable to figure out how to fix. She thinks she can. Actually, the breaking actually happens in Calculated. So you see a broken character in both Calculated and Simulated, but it's not like broken in spirit so much as broken mentally in a very specific way, and it's very interesting, and I really like that. So a lot of these books I picked because they're either lesser known or else they're just ones that I really like that a lot of people haven't read. There's a couple, obviously, that everybody has read, but I wanted to kind of use some other smaller picks, I guess, in many ways, and kind of promote those because I like promoting it. And then, so question 12 is tag some friends. So for this one I tried to think of who's actually read the Cosmere, and I don't know who's read the Cosmere. It seems like everybody's read the Cosmere, but I didn't want to tag the same people that I always tag, so I went with book reading, coffee drinking, and then shelf centered. So these both great channels, go check both of them out if you haven't already, but I tag both of them to do this tag if they want to. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite adventure. Also go check out the original tag video by Jesse the Sleepy Koala. Great channel, great original tag. Anyways, thank you guys for watching an Erudite adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday. We have our social medias linked in the description down below. Please like and comment and subscribe if you haven't already. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.